Everybody, Shabbat Shalom. Sorry we're a little bit late this morning. I can't blame that all on me. That was all my getting back from our little trip to Alabama and getting here. But I'm here, and we're all here. What a good group today here locally at the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana. Good to see all of my friends here. Also, for all of you who are watching online from across the world, welcome to our house. Welcome to the beautiful place where we get to come on Shabbat. I pray that you will be feel welcome here, that you will be blessed here, that you will be nurtured here, and that you will be astonished and amazed at the goodness of our King. This is the Sabbath, sweetness, the sweetness of this day when we actually embrace and download the holiness of our God. The King himself lets loose a little bit of his holiness, a little bit of his beauty and his majesty of the heavenly realm where the angels sing and the seraphim and the cherubim are gathering around the throne. And he releases a little bit of that to us every seventh day. And this is that day. And what a day and what a week we have to talk about. We study each week the parsha of the week, the assigned little portion of the first 5 books of the Torah and the first 5 books of the Bible. And this week we're in Deuteronomy. We're in chapter 3, verse 23 to start with, and we conclude with chapter 7, verse 11. It is a parsha that is known by the first word in the Hebrew language in which it's written, and that's Va'etchanan. It's a very strange phrase. It doesn't really translate well. Va'etchanan ba'et, unto something I came. I made a transition. It's just Moshe speaking. Moses, as he's known in the Western world. He is 120 years old. These are the last 36 days of his life. He is finishing strong. He is going to leave behind a legacy book, a magnum opus, as it were, of divine revelation. For 80 years, he has walked with the Holy One. 40 years strong, he walked with the Holy One. And in this process, he has been to the mountaintops, he's been to the valleys, he's been everywhere, and the lowest points of life, seeing blood and murder and human oppression operating. He's also been to the highest mountains of beauty and majesty. He's been in the heavenly realms looking at the heavenly courts of the Holy One. He's seen beauty. He's seen ugliness. He knows the difference. He knows how to move now fluidly between the things of the earth and the darkness of mankind and the way mankind treats each other and what he has done to the earth, and to move between that and this realm of what I call the beauty realm of God, the realm where majesty just exudes, where love and mercy and kindness emanates from. He can go back and forth between the two, but at 120 years old, he's become a master of the higher realms. And as a master of the higher realms, he's trying to teach us in a period of a few weeks, 36 days, 5 weeks, 1 day. He's trying to teach us in a few weeks what it took him 120 years of life to learn. What it took him 40 years of daily conversing with the creator of the universe face to face as a man communes with his friend. It took him 140 years of that, constantly, day in and day out, to learn the things he's going to try to teach us in the next, 5 weeks and 1 day. So forgive him if he overloads you a little bit. Forgive him if the things he says seem a little bit too hard for you to grasp, a little bit too difficult to attain, a little bit too difficult even to imagine at times, because he has seen the beauty. He has seen the plan, the grand plan of the creator of the universe for mankind and for the creation as an ecosystem. He has seen the grand plan, and he knows how far we have to go to see that grand plan begin to be operating. But he knows also, because he has had it downloaded to him, he knows the protocols and the strategies, the step-by-step approaches that are necessary to take fallen man and fallen creation and conform it to the grand plan of redemption and restoration. So we are in the week I call this the week of coming into alignment. I've told you about the world and the way we live down here, the way human minds think down here, the way human emotions feel down here, the way human people relate to one another down here. And then I've told you to contrast that with what's happening in heaven and the ways of the angels and the cherubim and the seraphim and the four living creatures and the 24 elders and how they relate to one another and relate to the Holy One in the heavenly realm. What if we begin to conform more to what's going on there than we do to what we normally see on the news or acted out before us in our lives, in our families, in our households, in our neighborhoods, in our cities, in our towns? What if we begin to conform our behavior and our thoughts and our approaches to life to that? Coming into alignment. That is Moshe's magnum opus message. How do you come into alignment with the thoughts and the ways and the perspectives and the values and the priorities and the plan of heaven, even as we live here in this life, in this world? The week of coming into alignment with the Holy One's persona and plan. I've kind of divided it two ways. First of all, before you can come into alignment with his plan and his strategies and his methodologies, you really need to come into alignment with him as a persona, the Holy One, the creator of the universe, the one who made you, the one who designed you, the one who planned for you to exist at this particular stage in time, in this particular place, all the places you have been touched by the world, and every places you have touched the world. He designed you to be here, orchestrated you to be here. What kind of a relationship, what kind of an approach do you have toward him? He is not something you believe in. He is not the founder of a creed. He is a divine persona with a will, with passions, with life force flowing out of him, with brilliance of mind and wisdom and a desire to communicate with you. So how do you see the persona? Because I know many people who try to align with the plan. Many people who try to align with the Scripture. They fight this to the day they die. They wrestle with it. They push it against it. They rage against it, trying to come into alignment with the Scripture, with the plan. But they have no concept of the persona behind the plan. Why you can trust the plan. Why the plan is worth having. The plan is only worth having because the Creator, the divine persona, is the author of that plan. And he is the one who will finish the plan. He is the one who pours his energy and his power and his majesty into the plan, his persona into the plan. So this is the week. Moshe is going to take us on a deep dive. This is Moshe's literary style in general. He first gives you a kind of a helicopter view. He begins to talk to you in terms of general ideas. And then when you're least expecting it, it's like a little child, two kids playing in the pool. All of a sudden, one of them sneaks up on the other one, just takes them and just pulls them underneath. And they take a deep dive. Well, that's the way the Holy One and Moshe do with us. They take us and they show us this beautiful scenery and this beautiful thing, and then they take us on a deep dive in one particular area. Last week, Moshe started this whole story, this whole sequence of artwork, this magnum opus, with a grand overview that sort of began at Sinai and moved out from there. He said, the Holy One said, you've walked around this mountain too many times. Time to move on. And then he began to go on a general course. It took us all the way, in general terms, kind of wide, sweeping language, all the way from Sinai to the place where we sit right now, which is on the banks of Moab, the banks of the Jordan Rift Valley, overlooking Jericho from the east. That's where we came, all the way from Sinai to there, and he came and gave us a broad helicopter overview. And then he did a little deep dive. He took us and he plunged us down and says, now let's go back and look at what happened at Kadesh Barnea. You thought I was just taking you on a nice little journey. No, I want to take you back to Kadesh Barnea. I want to take you back to the place of the spies. I want to take you back to the moments in time when you were most afraid. I want to make you face your fears. Because if you don't face your fears and trust me with those fears, you will never be able to go into the next stage of your land. So I'm going to take you back to the place where you were most afraid. Why were we most afraid? We were most afraid because the spies came back and they said, 10 of them at least. 10 spies came back and said, oh, the land will devour the people. There are giants there. They're Anakim. Sons of the Anakim are there. It's horrible. They understood the plan was to go in there. They didn't understand the persona of the one that was taking them there. They understand the beauty and the majesty and the power and the goodness of the one who was taking them there. So when the plan freaked them out. They wrestled, they raged against the plan. Well, this was the moment of fear. We saw, in our own mind's eye, most of us didn't even see. Only 10 people actually saw any giants. But all of them heard them tell the stories. And their stories instilled fear in us of something we had never seen in the presence of someone we were with constantly 24 hours a 7. This is what the tale of the human tongue can do. This is how dangerous it becomes when we start giving our opinions and telling what we think about different things. When we do what the rest of the world does, this is why the rest of the world suffers at our hands. We are supposed to bring forth stories, tales, a magnum opus of trust in the Holy One. And so he took a deep dive with us on down to Kadesh Barnea. And we faced it. And the one thing that he said, which still resonates in my ears from last week, in this devar, in this event, you had no faith. You had not just little faith like Yeshua often talked about with his disciples. You had zero. You had no idea. You had no attachment, no connection, no alignment with the divine persona and who I am. You were solely operating on the basis of logic and reason and your ability to think things through and see things through from your own perspective. You had zero emunah. No emunah. No life force of the Messiah living within you. No sense of trust and hope that the Holy One really was going to accomplish what he said he was going to do. You tried to reason it out and you died. You tried to logically think it through and you collapsed upon yourself. This is the lesson of Kadesh Barnea. Deep dive. Now, that was so bad. Those people were so foolish. Those people didn't have any. And then we look back and says, wait a minute, he's not talking about them. It isn't them that he's trying to tell you this story to. It's you. No temptation has befallen you other than that which is common to man. Every human being, everyone who is called unto the plan of the Holy One has to deal with Kadesh Barnea in their own soul. And has to deal with the lessons of Kadesh Barnea. So that was where he took the deep dive last week. Believe it or not, he's got another deep dive this week. Oh, and this deep dive is even deeper than that deep dive. That was a pretty deep dive because we're sitting there saying, do I have any emunah? Right now, as I look before me and the road set before me and the pathway that he has illumined for me to go on, the plan that he has and the calling that he has upon my life, do I have any faith or am I just relying upon my reason, my logic, my understanding in the flesh, in the natural? What am I relying upon? Well, that's the test of last week. This week we get a little different test, a deeper dive. So there will be one event that he hits upon. Should I tell you now or should I tell you later? If you've read it, you already know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But I'll tell you later. How about that? Because he wants to build up to that process. He's a magnificent author, a magnificent writer, and he's being inspired by the creator of the universe to tell this story in a way that will microwave 120 years worth of life experience into 36 days for us. And so he's going to start with something totally different than where he's going to deep dive. He starts by saying, basically, if I could paraphrase him, remember, remember after we faced the Emorites. Now, there's a little twist of Devarim, of powerful words in there, because you see, who was it that we were looking at Kadesh Barnea and being so afraid of? Well, the Anakites, but they were behind the Amorites. The Amorites were the guys that were standing in our way and that instilled such tremendous fear in us. And so he comes to the end of Parsha Devarim, the last week that we studied, and his basic at the end of the last week's study, he says, remember the Emorei, Sichon, and Og, the kings, when they came out against us. It's sort of like some of you will catch this and some of you won't. Those are the guys you were afraid of. And they came after you. And look what happened to them. Look where they are now, and look where you are right now. You had no faith, but God was still faithful. Though they came against you and you weren't even prepared, you didn't even know they were coming. You didn't even expect them to come because you were not in their land. You went the other way. They came after you anyway. And when they came after you anyway, the Holy One prevailed. And how many of you died in that battle? In that great battle when hundreds of thousands of Amorites came against you? How many of your people died? How many of your soldiers died? You remember how much faith you had? 0. How many of your soldiers died? 0. Now do you understand the persona that you're aligning with? Do you understand who it is that's behind you? Who it is that's motivating you? Do you understand who it is that's driving you, calling you, laying these things out before you? Do you understand his, not just his power, but his faithfulness to you? His covenant love for you. And we're going to talk about love. This is the parsha where love is reintroduced to the narrative. You know, we'll get to that in a moment. Before we get to that, there's so much here. Before we get to that, Moshe wants to stop the narrative for a few minutes and do a little drama. He does a little role-playing for us. He's going to do this a few times during this whole book, but this is one. And he stops the drama, stops everything he's doing, and he says, and then I pleaded. That's what we read in English. In Hebrew, it's va'etchanan ba'et. And that's a strange word. And I pleaded for the mercy, for the grace, for the chen, for the grace of God. So the first thing he's going to do is reintroduce something that we should already know. I know that there's a whole teaching in the New Testament world that says grace came after Yeshua came, and before that it was just law, and that's not the way it is by any stretch of imagination. Grace was introduced to us in the story of Noah. The Calvinists would call it prevenient grace. It said, what it said is that, and before all the stuff about calling Noah, he said, and Noah found chen. He found grace in the sight of the Holy One. Then he begins the whole story about it. And then he has this conversation with him. And then he says to build the ark. And then he says, I'll bring the animals. And then he says, I'm going to destroy the world. All this stuff is going to happen. I'm actually going to renew the world. But that was all about grace. The whole story of Noah and his generations is all about grace. Without grace, Noah would have perished in the flood. And just so that you realize your lineage, do you realize that if Noah had perished in the flood, we wouldn't be having this conversation? Not one of us would be here today. Noah is our common progenitor. He came through him and through Ham and Shem and Japheth, his sons, and their wives came all humankind, all races, all ethnicities, all countries, all geographical locations. Every human being that has ever lived or will ever live upon the face of the earth comes through Noah. And so you see now, hopefully, what it means for a Holy One to show chen, grace, to Noah. The possibilities that he sees in an individual life are incredible, are amazing. You think, well, my life's about over, my life's been tough, my life is a challenge, people don't understand my troubles. And he says, I look at your life and I see the potential possibilities of Noah-like regeneration in your life. Well, Noah, the thread of chen, of grace, ran through the whole story of Noah, ran through the whole story of the patriarchs. And Abraham called upon it, and we didn't even notice it. He said things like, if I have found grace in your sight. He knew it. He knew it was out there. When the three visitors visited in Genesis 18. He says, if I have found grace, if I have found chen in your sight, then do not pass your servant by. come, and then he invites them in to have a meal and realize that it's much more than just entertaining strangers. What he's doing is aligning with the divine plan. He's aligning with the divine persona and the divine plan. Well, that's his process. It goes all the way through all the patriarchs. If you look for it, if you do a word search, do your own deep dive through Strong's or whatever, and do your deep dive on this word or hin or grace or mercy, which is what it comes for, same word. Then you'll find the thread that's really woven all the way through. Well, here Moshe comes. He's going to give us a little acting. He's going to open this curtain, and I call it, Act 1, Scene 1 of this grand story. And he says, Va'et chanan ba'et. I came unto the grace. Hebrews writer says something like, you come boldly unto the throne of grace. You see those words. Now you see the pattern for it laid by Moshe. I threw myself. I exploded into this atmosphere of grace. I saw it. I pursued it. I dove into it. I threw myself before it. It became life to me, his grace. Now, Moshe had a little experience with this. When you see this, he's going to give you this story. He's going to tell you this story, give you this vignette, let you see him throwing himself on the mercy of God. Before you see that, remember the cleft of the rock. Remember the cleft of the rock. And remember the things he threw out there. If I have found grace in your sight, if I have found grace in your sight, then teach me your ways. He found and now he's just throwing, he found a little stream or a little river. Now he's found the ocean of grace. And he's going to throw himself on the ocean of grace. But he says, if I found grace in your sight, teach me your ways. Show me your glory. Show me the weight which you carry and the way in which you impact the world. It's not some flashy, weird stuff, some hoopla. It is the power and the energy with which God interacts with the world in such a way as to impact it. That's His glory. Teach me your ways. Show me your glory. And if you do not go with us, if your persona is not all up in our camp and all up in our lives and all up in our hearts and all up in our minds and all up in our thoughts, and all up in our emotions and all up in every aspect of our reasoning powers, if you're not all up in us, then don't take us up from here. Just let us basically die here at Sinai, which is where they were at the time. Well, that was his first experience, Moshe's deep dive so far with grace. But he's going even deeper this time. And so let's read it together. I want to turn your attention to Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 23. Now, in our fellowship, and those who join us online, we stand when we read, and we say a little blessing, a little quick, quiet prayer to the Holy One. So I invite all those who are with me and who can to stand. If you're driving, you sit right where you are. Beginning with verse 23 of Deuteronomy 3. Open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from us. Our souls cry out for your judgments at all times. How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your word. For your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Amen. Beginning with 3:23. Va'etchanan ba'et, and then I threw myself on the grace of the Holy One at that time, saying, O Lord God, O Adonai Elohim, you have begun to show your servant greatness and your mighty hand. 120 years in, he's saying, you have begun to show. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But the Holy One was wroth with me on your account and would not shema me. So the Holy One said to me, Rav Lecha, enough of that. Hush, child, in my transliteration. Speak to me no more on that matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah. Lift your eyes toward the west and the north, toward the south and the east. Behold it. Behold it with your eyes. But you will not cross over the Jordan. Instead, command Yehoshua. Encourage him and strengthen him, for he will go over before the people, and he will cause them to inherit the land that you see. And so we camped and stayed in the valley opposite Bet Peor. Thank you. You may be seated. This little vignette will start the whole Revelation stream, and it'll eventually have us deep diving at another location in our collective DNA history. But in the meantime, he said, I gave me, this is my personal, some would call it a personal pain or a personal tragedy. Let me just assure you, if you have any sense that somehow the creator of the universe was unfair to Moshe, or that Moshe suffered under this process because he did not go into the Jordan, let me suggest to you the very thing the Holy One has been trying to say. Moshe has been trying to tell you, you don't know the Holy One very well. You have zero emunah. You have zero understanding because you are looking at things from the human standpoint, the fleshly standpoint of what you would feel emotionally if you wanted to control God and he wouldn't let you. If you wanted to demand your will, and he said, no, child. That's not the way this works. That's not the way any of this works. No, child. Hush, child. Enough of that. And so what he's going to do, Moshe is going to throw himself on this grace of God, and he's going to say, my petition was stupid. My petition was short-sighted. I didn't even understand what was valuable. Why do I say that? Why did I say Moshe's petition was not valuable? First of all, let's assume that he was talking about leading the people into Israel. If Moshe's plan had been fulfilled, what would have been the role of Yehoshua? You know, I think we don't think the way the Holy One thinks. The Holy One thinks cross-generationally, and he understands that every person is born for a certain task. Moshe was never born for this task. That was not his job. That was not what he's called to. That's not what he was prepared for. And so if he said, my petition was a foolish petition, basically. I asked for something that I had no clue what impact that would have upon the rest of the world. I was not prepared to take people into the land, and the Holy One knew that, but I didn't. And so he says, instead, strengthen Yehoshua. Encourage him. He's the one who was designed for this role and for this purpose from the beginning of creation, from the beginning of family. Don't try to take somebody else's job. Don't try to take somebody else's blessing. Don't try to take somebody else's stuff just because you want it. That's your flesh screaming out at you. So he says that the other thing is, to think that we know what we need. We know what will satisfy us. We know what will cause us joy. That's the most shocking thing of all. Because I hope you heard it when I read it this time. Moshe asked to go into the land and to see. And the Holy One said, hush, child. In my paraphrase, hush, child. That's enough of that. But he said, instead, now get yourself up and lift up your eyes. Go up on top of Mount Pisgah. And I want you to open your eyes, and I want you to look. Now, there's a fascinating thing. Look to the north, to the south, the east, the west. look and see all those high mountains and Lebanon, all these different places. Do you know that the natural eyes cannot see that? No matter what mountain in Moab, in Jordan, you stand on, you cannot see any of the stuff he says to see. You'll see. In fact, most times it's all covered with haze. In the natural realm, it's all covered with very few days are really clear where you can actually see from the hill of Nebo or Pisgah, which is one of the cliffs on Nebo, to see that this process. So whenever he says, look, behold, open your eyes and behold and see, what he's saying is, get your head out of the earth. Get your head up here, and I will show you through my perspective this land you want to see. You will see it as no man could see it. If we understand that, if you've ever been somewhere, maybe you were riding in a car as a passenger. Some of you men or women have parents or whatever have done this, and you were supposed to lead your next day out. They go in that night, and you go wherever you're going, and the next day you wake up and you think, I'm supposed to go somewhere, but I don't even know how to get there. I don't know where I am. Because we can be somewhere and not see where it is. We can be somewhere and not understand what it means. We can be somewhere and not know the road map around it, know what's around it. And that's the problem with what Moshe asked. Moshe asked for the smallest thing. And he said, I don't want to give you the smallest thing. I want to give you the biggest thing. And that's the way it is. We throw out our puny little request to the Holy One out of our flesh, thinking what we need to know. He says, child, I know so much better than you. I have so much more for you than you've asked for. You asked for A, I'm going to give you the alphabet. You asked for a piece of dirt, and I'm going to give you the earth. I'm going to give you the nations. So ask your questions with a little bit of mercy and ready to receive more than you asked for. So he does this. He says, but command Yehoshua and encourage him and strengthen him. There's three verbs there, zav, and then encourage and then strengthen. I want you to really pour yourself into your next generation. If you don't see the value of the next generation, you'll think this life's all about you. About what you want, what you like, don't want, what you want to get, and your bucket list. He said, quit pouring your attention into your bucket list. Pour it into the next generation. Pour it into the generations that come. Pour it into my plan. Get your bucket list. That's an earthly, worldly viewpoint of bucket lists and that kind of stuff. Then no, you're here to leave an imprint upon the sands of time. Be sure you leave that imprint. That's much more important. So he says, command Yehoshua, encourage him and strengthen him, for he will go over before this people, and he will cause them to inherit the land that you see. Now, and then he says, so we stayed. We just sat there. We just got comfortable. And then he throws out this little phrase that should run a little bit of chill down our spine in a negative way. We stayed at Bet Peor. Bet Peor is not a good place to stay. Bet Peor is not your honeymoon destination. Bet Peor, we should know, because we know the story from the book of Numbers, what happened at Bet Peor. At the place where the Midianite women, the daughters of Midian, came dancing into our camp under a theory, under a plan, under the dark strategy of the adversary and Balaam to come in and entice us away from our covenant connection with the Holy One. We should remember Bet Peor very well. He doesn't deep dive on Bet Peor. The Holy One doesn't want to fixate our attention on that moment. He has another moment he wants to fixate on. And we'll get to that in just a second. Let's go to chapter 4. In chapter 4, after he's given us this little vignette, basically teach us about grace. Teach us that grace means more than we think it means. Grace, we think, means I get what I want because he's such a nice, kind grandpa, granddaddy, grandma. He gives me candy after dinner. He gives me candy before dinner. That's not grace. That's really laziness. Now, grace is to say, no, I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to give you what is going to fulfill your real desires, your real cravings in life. So he throws all grace. Now in chapter 4, verse 1, he begins to talk to us. Now, O Israel. And he's going to start throwing out some verbs that we'll hear. And in English we read, listen. Now, O Israel, listen. Now the Hebrew verb is shema, and it means to get in resonance with, to actually absorb the energy of, and begin to resonate in the same frequency with. To really connect, to align with. So hear, O Israel. Now, O Israel, shema. This is how you come into alignment. This is the alignment process. You shema. You don't obey. That will come naturally. That will come without any energy or effort on your part because you are feeling the energy of shemaing. I cringe when people want to argue that all of kingdom is about obeying. It works its way out to obeying, but it's about shemaing. It's about getting in alignment with the persona and the plan of the Holy One. And so the Holy One, now, O Israel, shema, to the statutes and the judgments that I teach you to, and in English we read observe. In Hebrew, it's shamar. So the first one was shema, to resonate and tune with, to get in the same frequency and rhythm with, to flow in the energy of. That's shema. Shamar is to respond with love, with cherishing, with desire, with passion, with a desire to protect, to observe, to hold fast to that, not lose pitch, to not lose that frequency and wander off in some other way. Not to go off to some other voice that's making some other resonation in this process. So now here, listen, O Israel, to the statutes and the judgments that I teach you to shamar, observe. In order that you may live and go in and possess the land that the Holy One, your God of your fathers, is giving you. That you may live and go in and possess the land which your God, your fathers. Now, the basic general, wide-sweeping thing that Moshe has just said is, your life is all about the statutes and the judgments of God. He's going to expand upon that multiple times in the course of this book. As a matter of fact, that's going to be so deep a theme that it will almost be tiresome to our ears to hear it. He will say it so often. You have no life independent of the statutes and the judgments of God. That's why we pray our prayer from Psalm 119 every morning before we do our readings. You know, my heart, my soul cries out for your judgments at all times. How can a young man keep his way pure? These are the things that we do. So he says, now listen to the statutes and the judgments that I teach you to observe, that you may live and go in and possess the land that the Holy One, God of your fathers, is giving you. Before I go any further with this, I want to remind you what I said earlier about the fact that God is going to reintroduce love and the love motivator and love language back into human understanding through this parsha. Moshe is going to be his vessel. He's going to teach us about love. He introduced the process in Exodus chapter 20, verse 6. He's going to reiterate it in chapter 5 of Deuteronomy. And the context is not what you think, because there's not some emotional, fluffy aspect of what love is in the context of God-man relations. He's going to give you a little hint right here. It's all going to be centered upon the statutes and the judgments of God. This is what is the center point of love and the emanating point from love. Now let's go to chapter 4, verse 2. You are not to add asaf. You're not to build upon in addition form. You are not to add to the davar, the word that I instruct you, nor are you to take away from it. Don't go into spiritual addition and subtraction. You are not to add to the word that I command you, nor take from it, he says, that you may shamar, treasure, cherish, and guard the commandments of the Holy One, your God, that I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Holy One did at Baal Peor. So he did touch on it. He didn't talk in detail. He said that the Holy One has destroyed from among you all the men who followed Baal of Peor. But you, if you're here, you overcame. You've so far survived the downward pull of Baal Peor. though this temptation that they suffered is not something unique to them. You are also dealing with the Baal Peor of your culture, of your age, of your nation. Baal Peor is still alive, and he's still pulling you, but you're still alive, so you have so far overcome the temptation. It says, but you who held fast to the Holy One your God are alive today, every one of you. But you who held fast to the Holy One your God are alive today. But you who held fast to the Holy One your God are alive today. Do you remember me talking about this being the parsha of alignment? You can hold fast to many things in this life. But if you're drowning and someone jumps in the water to save you, you could try to hold fast to a piece of driftwood that's floating by. You could try to hold fast and grab a hold of maybe a leaf, a withered vine that's floating by in the water. But you know what's going to be successful? When you grab a hold of and you hold fast to the one who's trying to save you. Those of you who held fast to the Holy One, your God, are alive today. Every one of you. You say, well, but I was faithful to your words. I tried to stay close to Torah. I tried to do what Yeshua taught. I tried to believe the right things. I tried to attend the right meetings. I tried to say the right confession. I tend to follow the right rules. He says, that isn't the question I ask you. That's not where you get your life. You don't get your life that way. You get your life by holding fast to the one who comes into the water to save you, to the Holy One, to align yourself with the persona of the Holy One. That is the secret of the stairs here. That you may keep the commandments. That if you do this, you may keep the commandments. But you who held fast to the Holy One your God are alive today, even one of you. Surely, Moshe says, I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as the Holy One my God commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. This has a future orientation to it. Will we commit that we're going to hold fast to the Holy One, and as we go forward, holding fast to the Holy One, everything holding fast to Him, that we will follow and walk in the statutes and the judgments of God in the future as we go. Why? Be careful to observe them, shamar them, for this is your wisdom. Not how quick we can Google. Not how fast we can do an online search. Not how well we can deep dive into the Blue Letter Bible and the Gesenius and all the things I love so much to study. But the real quest is going to be not whether we can do all that. It's going to be whether we will hold fast to the Holy One and walk out His judgments in real time. Therefore, be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding. Oh, we're beginning to see just a glimpse of the plan. The great plan is not that we'd have a nice, wonderful life and we'd have a family in the suburbs, a house in the suburbs, and 3 good kids and grandkids, and that's all well and good. The real plan is that we would have a download and an offload of the wisdom of God in front of human beings in the real world, in front of all the nations, in front of all the peoples, that we would become shining resonators of His wisdom, and it would come out in our daily lives and daily walk, our conversations, our behavior, even our demeanor would then begin to reflect His wisdom and understanding through these statutes. So be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. They're not going to, this is just a first part of what people are supposed to see and say when they see us. There's some other things, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But I want you to get this first one first. our purpose and the purpose of our realigning with the Holy One and His words is so that there will be an impact in the world. Is so that people who have no hope other than just watching the news and listening to the doctors and listening to the scientists and listening to all the stuff, the things that men say that are stuff of Kadesh Barnea. You should be very afraid. You should be very afraid. You should be very afraid. The Kadesh Barnea lost nonsense that people want to throw at you, that is there, but we have something else that we have access to. We have the wisdom and understanding of the Holy One to be able to transcend that nonsense that people are throwing at you. So he says, they're supposed to say, surely this great nation, this great people, is a wise and understanding people. Stop the tape. Not the video, just the tape. How many people are saying that about you? How many people on social media who see your post are saying that about? How many people in your workplace or in your school are saying about this, surely this is a wise and understanding people? How many people at the marketplace where you go? How many people in this neighborhood where you live? How many people in your own household are taking notice and saying, surely this is a great and understanding people? Well, I stopped the tape for you and asked you those questions because that's how serious this is, and it's how light we have tended to take it. Because, quite honestly, I've seen some of your posts on Facebook and social media. And you've seen some of mine. And we've seen how we behave in the marketplace when the person pulls out in front of us on the street. We've heard the things coming out of your mouth whenever you see somebody that you disapprove of, some politician or some government official who does something which is obviously probably not good. They don't do much good. That's not even they're here to cause as much grief as they can in a shorter period of time. We're here to be wise and understanding people. And we're here to cause them to say, whoa, that's not like the rest of the world is behaving. People kept amazing at Yeshua. He doesn't teach like one of the scribes, or he teaches as someone who has authority. Your authority is the wisdom and understanding of the Holy One as a persona and through His words. That is your wisdom and understanding. That's the authority you possess. So he says, people should be saying about you, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. And then they should go forward. For what great nation is there that has God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us, for whatever reason or we may call upon Him? What great nation is there that has God so near to us? Is He near to you? Do you live in constant awareness, or at least regular re-awareness of His nearness to you? Because if you're not near to Him and He's not near to you, and you have no concept of that nearness, no wonder you're not showing yourself as being one of those wise and understanding people. You're full of your opinions. You're full of your attitude and your hurtness and your wounds that you suffered in life. You're full of your fear at Kadesh Barnea. You're full of all these things. You haven't got the wisdom and understanding because you don't sense His nearness to you. You don't pursue and push into and press into that nearness. That's why He gave us His example. You're going to be shocked in this film, I think, when you hear what next I'm going to say, what Moshe is trying to teach us. First of all, he says that God is so near to you. You remember I told you at the first, Va'et Chanan Ba'et, and I rushed into and threw myself into the ocean, as it were, of grace. Do you know there's an ocean of grace that's right in front of you and right behind you and right to your right, to your left, above your head, below you, that you are in the presence of this amazing grace of the Holy One, the favor that pushes you forward and design. Well, that's just part one. He said, what great nation is there that has God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us for whatever reason we may call upon him? So how's your prayer life? Now, I love the juxtaposition of these two passages because Moshe just showed you a prayer model. You pray for whatever comes into your head to pray for. But you better be prepared to have God give you what he wants to give you. But what he wants to give you is way better than you ever asked for. Way more reaching, more far-reaching, more impactful, more world-changing than what you had the ability to think up in your own head that you ought to ask for. So he says, now, what nation is there that God has God so near to it as the Holy One our God is to us for whatever we may call upon him for? Wow. Are you known for your prayer life? I don't mean you get to tell God what to do and he does it. I mean, are you known for being able and willing to go prostrate yourself before God or stand before God or whatever physical position you wish to take, posture you wish to take with him, but be willing to let him put his own wisdom into you. Let his have his answer into your life and be willing to walk away with a big smile on your face. I wish I had known to ask for that. I wish I'd known that you were doing good in all these things and I was just not getting it. I wish I'd known that there was more things happening than just my will being done, my plan being fulfilled. I wish I had understood that. Could you walk away with a smile on your face? Well, he says, what nation is there that has God so near to it as the Holy One our God is to us? For whatever reason we may call upon him. And they keep going. The people of the earth, the people of the nations, the people of your neighborhood, the people of your workplace, the people in your family are supposed to be saying, and what great nation is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in all of this Torah that I set before you this day? Now, okay, put your armor on, your steel-toed shoes. Let's all put them on together because we're going to need them because something's going to hit our toes in just a few moments. I don't mean to in any way discount anyone's personal struggles. I understand them. As best I know how. I try to be empathetic, sympathetic, and whatever. I do because I understand this is real. And you really do feel it. And it really does hurt, and it is really hard. I do understand that. But when you learn to transcend the natural and go into the spiritual realm and get out of the dog-eat-dog, flesh-eat-flesh world down here and step into the heavenly realm and see things from his perspective, you begin to feel less of that pain and less of that suffering and less of that process and say, you know, like you would a child who you have to discipline a little bit, give them a little swat or a lecture or whatever, a timeout, whatever you feel to do to corporal punishment. I'm not even going to get into that issue. Whatever you think you have to do to discipline your child, why do you do that? Because you're angry, you're mad, because you're so ticked off that the Holy One lets you have that child? No, because you want that child to grow and mature and get better. So I'm going to step on your toes because Moshe stepped on mine, and I can turn around and return the favor. Many times in life, in the position I hold, in the place where I am in the world, I get emails, I get messages, instant messages, I get different calls, I get telephone calls, I get different people, and a lot of times it's one spouse or one person in a family who has walking in the Torah or has tried to walk in the Torah, found the beauty of the Sabbath, found the beauty of the festivals of Moedim, found the beauty of God's plan for our diet, and how wonderful it is, how much better it is than just doing what you see on the people doing on Food Channel and eating like that because it tastes good. Learning that he has a plan of dietary, and that's we began to touch that. And somebody else in the household, maybe the other spouse, maybe the children, maybe the parents, don't get it, don't like it, mock you, resist you. It hurts. I knew that. I'm not saying it doesn't. It is painful, and it seems unbearable at times. Whenever you want You want to introduce the beauty of the Sabbath, or the beauty of the Moedim, or the beauty of the holy wisdom of Torah into people's lives, and they just mock you and say, that's all done away with. We just have to believe this, and magically, like a poof of dust, Puff the Magic Dragon comes, and we're good. We're good. It's easier that way. We don't have to do all of the stuff. We don't have to let anybody step on our toes. We just, poof, it's good. Because we said these magic words. That's what people want to believe, and I understand that. And it is hard whenever someone in your family is not getting it and doesn't want it and comes against you personally in that process. So, realizing that, I'm not trying to demean you. But here's the question. If his words are truly good, if they're truly beautiful, if they're truly powerful, and we're flowing with them, and we're aligned with them, and we're walking in them, what is supposed to happen? What are they supposed to say? Now, those are stupid laws. You're a fool for going into that. You're in a cult. You've gone over the dark side. You've forsaken the grace of Yeshua. If they're truly as beautiful and as powerful and as life-giving as he says they are, and as they are, then what's happening in the translation? Maybe there's something in the translation and the interaction and the implementation that is the real culprit. Maybe it's not the words, and maybe it's not even the people. Maybe it's in the implementation. Maybe sometimes we present something in such a way that it hides its beauty. And it becomes ugly. It becomes angry. It becomes like a form of judgments or judgmentalism or cruelty or legalism. Sometimes we say, you're going to do the Sabbath or I'm going to spank you. Good luck with that. Over a long period of time in particular. I mean, we are supposed to present this in a beautiful way. You know, one of the things that I learned in my very early years working as a front-end manager or checkout supervisor and front-end manager of Walmart during my law school career. It's not just having merchandise. It's how you display it. It's when you display it. It's where you display it. It's merchandising. It is a matter of presentation to the eye. It is a matter of putting forth that which will create an interest and that will cause you to look deeper and that will attract your and begin to flow with the sense that I want that. That's neat. I want that. It's all a matter of eye level, eye placement, and then a matter of how difficult it will be or easy it will be to get it in the cart and take it out and how much it will cost you. All these things are part of merchandising. Well, we have learned merchandising in Walmart and discount cities everywhere, but we have not learned merchandising in the kingdom very well. You say, that's compromising the word. You cannot compromise the word of the Holy One. He will not be compromised. You may compromise anything, but his word cannot be diminished by what you do or do not do. So the question is, how am I to use wisdom and understanding to present the Torah, the Sabbath, everything beautiful about it, everything about the Messiah, how it foretells the Messiah, shows his way, his lifestyle, his ways. All of that is to be presented in such a way that is so beautiful that people say, like that chopper says at Walmart, man, I need one of those. I need some of that. I need that fish. I need that rod with that special reel. I need that purse. I need that pair of shoes. I need that because that's what will give me joy. Well, that's the core key. How are we doing with that? So I said I'd step on your toes. Got your steel toes on because instead of blaming everybody else for not receiving the gifts you have to give, maybe repackage it a little bit. Maybe put a little bow on it. Do whatever you got to do to make it joyful, because if it's not joyful to you, it won't be joyful to them. If it's not a delight to you, then it won't be a delight to them. Ordering them to do it is not going to get it done. Well, and what great nation is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in all this law that I set before you this day? I'll go on. Verse 9. Only take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. And teach them to your children and your grandchildren, especially concerning deep dive warning. Here's the deep dive. Last week we did the deep dive in Parsha Devarim on the sin of the spies. This time we're going to deep dive on the next thing he's going to talk about, especially concerning the day you stood before the Holy One, your God, in Horeb. When the Holy One said to me, gather the people to me, and I will let them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came nearer to me, and you stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the midst of the heavens, with darkness, with cloud, and with thick darkness. And the Holy One spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. And you heard the sound of the words, but you saw no form. You only heard a voice. This is all good, and it all goes on. I want to stop right there for a second. The voice from the fire. I told you we're going to align with the persona of the Holy One, and then we're going to align with His words and with His instructions and His teachings and His ways. You have to align with Him first. It says the first thing that you did when you came to Sinai was not hear a bunch of stuff and instructions. The first thing you did was hear a voice speaking to you from the fire. Moshe knew a little bit about a voice that speaks to you from the fire. That was how he met the Holy One in the first place, the burning bush. So here we are all together. It says deep dive, take you back in your DNA memory. Because in the DNA memory, we were there when we were not physically there in our lifetimes. All of us were there. All of us were at Sinai. All of human beings were at Sinai. And so in our deep DNA memory, he's taking us back on this deep dive. He says, remember when you stood there at the base of the mountain and you connected with all the sounds and the sights, and then you heard a voice speaking to you from the fire. Before you knew what he was going to say, you connected with a voice speaking to you from the fire. Are you connected to that voice? I mean, one thing I see about the lives of people is that we get connected to a book, but not connected to a voice. And of all people in the world that you might know, I'm sure there are people who love the Torah more than I do, but I love it a whole lot. Well, I don't love the Torah near as much as I love the one who spoke it. And whenever I get connected just to the Torah and not to the one who spoke it and the voice that speaks from the fire, and it begins to be words on a page as opposed to coming out of the fire of Sinai into my heart and shaking, resonating into my soul, then I begin to lose it. So he said, the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire, and you heard the sound of the words, but you saw no form. You only heard a voice. And he declared to you the covenant that he commanded you to perform, to do. You were supposed to do stuff. The 10 words, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Holy One commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments in order that you might observe them in the land which you cross over to possess. So now he gives connection to and alignment with the Holy One and that voice that speaks out of the fire, that energy of heaven. Do you feel the energy? I mean, are you pulsing inside with the energy of the Creator of the universe? Are you downloading that into your life? Are you only thinking in your head? Are you head people, or are you voice of from the fire people? That's going to change the result. The impact is going to be, if you are voice of the fire people, you're going to find out that the people around you say, whoa, what people on earth is it that's like this? Truly, this is your wisdom and understanding. Okay. This is take careful heed to yourself, because you saw no form. He's deep diving. He's taking us on a deep dive. Do you remember what shape he looked like? No, you don't. Do you remember what his facial expressions were? No, you don't. Do you remember what imagery you put? No, you don't. The voice from the fire was enough for you. As a matter of fact, he intentionally did not show you any form, so why do you keep attaching yourselves to forms? He says, you heard the voice. He said, you saw no form when the Holy One spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Take careful heed of yourselves, lest you act corruptly and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of a male, the likeness of a female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged creature, bird that is in the air, the likeness of anything that crawls upon the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water beneath the earth. I've just described most of the interior decor of the world. Shapes, forms, creatures, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. He said, why? Because to the extent you try to connect these creatures, these images, with the Holy One, or in any way think this is what your creativity is supposed to be spent upon, then you've lost the alignment with the Holy One. He's not about making forms. And take heed, lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the host of heaven, you feel driven to honor them and serve them, which the Holy One your God has given to all peoples under the whole of heaven as a heritage. We could spend about a week unpacking that one verse. I will say that to you. I'm not going to do that here. But if I didn't describe your interior decor, most people's interior decor before I did this, I just did now. Well, I won't go into that. And verse 20. But the Holy One has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be his people and inheritance as you are this day. He sort of sneaks that in on you. You do know who you are, don't you? You do know what the Holy One has done for you, don't you? Do you know what he's called you to be, don't you? You do. We're just going to throw it in there and then move on, but do you get it, first of all, who he is and why you're aligned with him, what his words really mean, and how they're supposed to impact the world, and do you understand your role in this entire grand plan? You understand what he brought you out of? I never forget the testimony of where you came from. Never forget what he's brought you out of. Never quit talking about how honored you are just to be known and loved by him, much less to be redeemed by him and brought forth by him and put in a position of impact and influence by him. Because you came out of nowhere and were nobody. I'm trying to step on your toes. We were nobody. We were nothing. He's going to say, look, I didn't pick you. I didn't choose you because you were some great, large nation and all the most intelligent people in the world and the best artists, the best singers, the best musicians, the best writers. I didn't choose you because you were the best of anything. He's going to tell you why he chose you. And it's going to be a little humiliating and a little bit invigorating at the same time. He chose you because of the love he had for your great grandfather. It has nothing to do with you at all. He made a promise to Abraham. He made a promise to Yaakov. He made a promise to Yitzhak, your fathers. He made a promise to these, your fathers, to Noah. To Adam, he made promises to them. He made commitments to them. He said, because of that, I'm doing this for you, because it's not just for you, it's for all mankind. It's for all sons of Adam and all sons of Noah and all sons of Abraham and all sons of Yitzhak and all sons of Yaakov. Love, that he reintroduces love. All right, I want to move on because of the time. If you keep going everywhere, if you want to know a little secret to the book of Deuteronomy in general, look for every time he starts talking about his statutes and his judgments or his commandments. He introduces new little speeches with these catchphrases: commandments, judgments, laws, ordinances in English. These are hukim, mishpatim, mitzvot in Hebrew. Those are the secrets of where he begins and ends little speeches. Let's move on to chapter 6. He's going to deep dive Sinai. And I don't have time to go through the full deep dive. He's going to deep dive it twice. He's going to deep dive it in chapter 4, and he's going to deep dive it again in chapter 5. Matter of fact, this is so central to your existence that if you don't really get your DNA memory of Sinai active, you're really going to have real trouble in projecting the alignment with the Holy One and the alignment with His words. You might be one or the other, but you can't do both unless you've reconnected with this special deep dive at Sinai. All of chapter 4 after chapter 5. Go to chapter 6. This is the center point of this parsha. Beautiful. And Moshe called all Israel. This is chapter 6. Hold on. I'm still going the second deep dive. After the second deep dive. Now this is the commandment. Chapter 6, verse 1. Hear the key word? This is the commandment. These are the statutes and judgments. This is the key word. The key phrase to open your eyes. This is a new download. This is the commandment, and these are the statutes and the judgments which the Holy One, your God, has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them, shamar them, in the land in which you're crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Holy One, your God, that you may keep all His statutes and His commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be long. Therefore, Shema, O Israel, hear, O Israel, and be careful, be shamar, to asa it, to build it, to make it happen, to make it come to life in real terms, in order that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly. It is well with my soul. We all know that hymn, right? We all know that song. We have our own ideas of what that means. The Holy One's saying, I'm telling you what this means. If you want it to be well with your soul, if you want it to be well with your soul, that it may go well with you. That's the key. And hear, O Israel, and be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Holy One, the God of your fathers, has promised you, on a land flowing with milk and honey. And then verse 4. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. This is the hero Israel, the Lord our God. The Lord is, in English we read one. It's a bigger word than one. It's not numerical. It's essential. It's the standpoint of He is a complete and total unity that never does anything inconsistent with each other. Though you may not see the consistency, He is always a one. He's always an echad. He's always a bundle of truth, a bundle of wisdom, a bundle of life. And so everything He does is flowing together in a complete unity. He is an echad. Well, what is this word? Shema Yisrael. What happens when you hear that? This has a resonance and a frequency to it. This is why it's so powerful. This is the first words that a Hebrew child learns, and the last words that we whisper whenever we die. This is the words we speak at least 3 times a day. Every time we go to a new place, a new location, we stand on the beach at Orange Beach, or we go to a new neighborhood or a new school, the first thing we're to say is Shema Yisrael. Not necessarily out loud. How loud is up to you. Volume is not an issue. You can whisper it. You can do it under your breath. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Now something's happened inside of you because you see there's a spiritual part of you that is a fragment that comes from heaven. And you just heard your native tongue. You just heard your native language. You just heard the sounds of heaven resonating down on earth. And so that and the other things, the Aaronic blessing has the same impact upon you. If you hear it sung in Hebrew, you begin to hear it, you know. Yivaberech Adonai v'yishmarecha. And it goes on, and I'm not going to do that right now. That's at the end. But, well, these sounds are supposed to cause the spirit within you to resonate with the sounds and the signals of heaven. So Moshe says, Shema, O Israel, the Holy One, our God, the Holy One is Echad. And then he says something very strange. You are to, ve'ahavta. You are to love the Holy One, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength and all your substance. Strength and substance meld. You say, but rewind the tape. What is this about love? This hasn't been about love. We don't have a love language yet. We don't have a kingdom of heaven love language. We have people love languages. We have all that stuff that whoever the writer of that love language book wrote, all human psychology stuff that they throw in there and add some spiritual connotations to it. We have human love languages, but what about a love language of the covenant? He has a love language. He has a love language he speaks to us in and operates to us in, and he has a language he expects from us, that he anticipates, he desires, he longs for, he hungers for from us. There's a love language connection between us and the creator of the universe. What's the love language? Wow, this is the first time Moshe's ever mentioned it. Ever. The first time we heard about love was the Holy One himself spoke it at Sinai, the deep dive. He says, I am merciful, compassionate, slow to anger, all this stuff. He says, having mercy, having covenant faithfulness to those who love me. Wait a minute, we're supposed to, before we do stuff, we're supposed to love him? Before we do the statutes and the observances and all, but there's supposed to be something at the root of this thing that goes deeper than that, this love. And so he says, this is how he introduced it, and Moses hadn't spoken about it since. That was Exodus chapter 20, verse 6. And Moshe hadn't said a word about love and God loving us or us loving him since. And suddenly he's about to blow it out there. He says, I took you on a deep dive, and I'm going to tell you what your life is about. It is about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And then he's going to tell you what that love language is. Do you want to know what the creator of the universe's love language is? Don't speak too soon. This is going to blow everybody's theology out of the water. Here's the love language. Here's what the creator of the universe longs for and hungers for from you. Here's what he expects you to teach other people to do. Let's just listen. You are to love the Holy One your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be on your heart, in your heart. And you are to teach them diligently to your children. And you are to talk about them when you sit in your home and when you walk by the way, all the time. And you are to, when you lie down, talk about when you lie down and when you rise up, all times of the day, all places you go. And you are to bind them as a sign upon your hand. It's to be the way you introduce yourself to the world. And they shall be as frontlets for your eyes. It's the way you look at everything, the vision, the perspective through which you look at everything in the world. And you are to write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. Your houses are to be marked off different. The things that happen outside your house, inside your gates, outside your gates, are supposed to be marked by these words that I tell you. This is my love language. Yeshua said it very simply and very shortly, very quickly. If you love me, you'll build buildings, have services, do sacraments. No, it's really very simple. His love language is not complicated. Well, it may be complicated in a way, in a sense, because you got to connect to the source before you connect to the words. But he says, here's my love language. If you love me, to the extent you love me, then that means you will be prove it by keeping my commandments. That is love in the Holy One's vocabulary. He says, so will be when the Holy One your God brings you into the land of which he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and Yaakov, to give you large and beautiful cities you didn't build, houses full of good things that you didn't fill, hewn out wells that you didn't dig, vineyards and olive trees that you didn't plant. When you have eaten and are full, then beware lest you forget the Holy One who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You are to fear the Holy One your God, and serve him and take your oaths in his name. And you are not to go after other gods, the gods of other people who are around you. For the Lord your God is a jealous God among you, lest the anger of the Holy One your God be aroused against you and destroy you from the face of the earth. You are not to tempt the Holy One your God as you tempted him at Massah. You are to diligently keep the commandments of the Holy One your God, and his testimonies, and his statutes that he has commanded you. And you are to do what is right and good, not in your own sight, in the sight of the Holy One, that it may be well with you. It is well with my soul, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the good land of which the Holy One swore to your fathers, to cast out all your enemies before you, as the Holy One has spoken. And when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is the meaning of the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments which the Holy One our God has commanded you? Be careful now. You're on holy ground. First of all, you're supposed to live your life in such a way, in such humility, in such honor, in such reverence, that your son will ask you that question, or your daughter will ask you that question. If they're not asking you the question, it might not be the problem with the child. It might be a problem with the parent. It might be a problem with the implementation. It might be a problem with the way in which you're communicating it. Because you should live it in such a way that it is absolute delight to you and joy to you. You know, if the news bothers you so bad you sit and fume, maybe it's because you connected too closely to the news and disconnected too much from the Holy One. Because the Holy One and his ways are life and joy and peace. If all they see you doing, all your children or your grandchildren see you doing, is fretting over what was on Tucker last night, spewing at how horrible this group or that group is, or the laws are, or this, that, and that, if that's what they see you doing, and then you try to tell them about the Sabbath, or you try to tell them about the Torah, or you try to tell them about the goodness of God, they'll say, I don't want any part. You're miserable. Look at you. I listen to you moaning and groaning and cursing under your breath at the politics and the stuff. I don't want that. Why would I want that? Why would I care about life? But if you have lived your life in sheer delight in and reverence to the Holy One, if not only his words, but him as an entity, as a persona, are beautiful to you, then you can expect 100% your children at some point will come to you and say, what's this all about? Tell me all about this. Now, they may be 6, they may be 60. But at some point, if you live it, they will come. Now, he said, then you are to say to your son, I've heard too many people say too many things. I've said too many things myself that weren't this. Well, we're not like them. Those people are pagans. Those people don't know anything. We're smarter than they are. We're special. That's not what he says to say. That's just what most of us say. We're moral. They're immoral. We're right on all these issues. They're wrong on all these issues. We're saying they're insane. That's what we say, unfortunately. What we're said to say, what we're told to say, then you are to say to your son, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt. Just slaves. Hopeless, helpless. Nothing really to communicate, to stand for us, nothing to speak for us. We had nothing, we were nothing. We were nobody. We were less than nobody. We were somebody else's nobody. Son, that's who you are. Daughter, that's who you are until. Until what, Dad? Until what, Mom? And the Holy One brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Is that your story? You know, I go back to Kadesh Barnea. Why are we afraid of those giants, Dad? Well, they're big. Wasn't Pharaoh big? Weren't the 600 chariots, finest chariots, big? Wasn't the big cloud of smoke that they raised big? I thought you said that he brought you out of Egypt with a strong and mighty hand. Why are you afraid of these giants, Dad? Mom, why are you cowering in fear? Why are you saying, let's go back to Egypt? Why? Why? Why are you saying the politicians are going crazy and the world's going to die and global warming or the New World Order is going to destroy us all? Why are you saying that, Dad? Is not God the one who brought you out of Egypt with a strong right hand? Didn't he bring you out of nothing when it looked hopeless and helpless and bring forth life out of you, bring forth hope for you, bring forth a new command, a new direction, a new world, a new potential, a new possibility? Didn't he do that for you? Why then not now? Well, I'm supposed to say, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Holy One brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and the Holy One showed signs and wonders before our eyes, great and wonderful against Egypt and Pharaoh and his household, and he brought us out from there, that he might bring us in to give us the land he swore to our fathers. And that Holy One instructed us to observe these statutes, to fear the Holy One our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive even as it is to this day. And so it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to observe all these commandments before the Lord our God as he instructed us. That's the message that we're supposed to have for our kids. That's the message that will resonate. The other messages will always be like, you say you're full of faith, you believe in this, and you trust in that, but when you get down, when you watch TV, you turn into a whimpering, slobbering, angry piece of garbage. You get mad and you yell across the table, across the room, at Nancy somebody and Donald somebody and whoever else you ain't happy with. And you lose sight. You unalign. You unalign with the very thing you says is at the core of your being and the essence of who you are. You get mad because some neighbor's not doing the right thing. Somebody else is taking your job when... I said, oh, no, you're not supposed to have that reaction. When you align with the Holy One and when you align with his words, it is like beauty unveiled on a canvas. It is like a work of art, a magnum opus, a work of masterpiece that causes people to say, wow. And yes, there are some flaws. Of course, there are some flaws in every masterpiece. But you know what? The beauty outweighs the flaws. You never look at the flaws on a masterpiece. You only look at the beauty of that's on the canvas. Well, let's finish the reading. Chapter 7. When the Holy One, your God, brings you into the land that you go to possess, and he casts out the many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, Democrats, Republicites. 7 nations greater and mightier than you. Sorry about that. And when the Holy One, your God, delivers them over to you, you are to conquer them and utterly destroy them, and you are to make no covenant with them, no show no mercy to them, nor make marriages with them. You are not to give your daughter to their son, or take their daughter for your son. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Holy One will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. But thus you are to deal with them. You're to tear down their altars, break down their sacred pillars, cut down their images, and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a holy people, a kadushim, for the Holy One your God. And the Holy One your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples on the face of the earth. The Holy One did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any other people, because you were the least of all peoples. But because the Holy One loves you, and because he would keep an oath he swore to your fathers, the Holy One brought you out with a mighty hand, redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And then he sums it all up, this part of the message. That Hanan, and to grace I came. Therefore, I've deep dived with you, he would say, through the whole Sinai experience. I've taken you to your purpose and your destiny and how you're to disconnect from the world, not from the Holy One. And he says, therefore, know that the Holy One, your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and mercy for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commandments. And he repays those who hate him to their face to destroy them, and he will not be slack with him who hates him. He will repay him to his face. Therefore, keep the commandment, the statutes, and the judgments that I command you today to observe them. That ends the reading for the week of Parsha Va'etchanan. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week. For those of you who joined us, leave a message on the Facebook or on YouTube. If you watch it on YouTube, let us know you were here. Let us know you came. If you have any thoughts, any comments, any questions, any criticisms, any prayer requests, just let us know where you are and that you're watching. We bless you. Would you all stand, please? Yivarech Adonai v'yishmarecha. Yair Adonai panev elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panev elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. May the Holy One bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Holy One lift up his countenance upon you. And may he give you health, wellness, provision, protection, safety, security, a sense of belonging, a sense of worth, a sense of value, a sense of purpose. May you give you joy. May he give you delight. May he give you peace. Shabbat shalom. See you next week. All you guys will be back in about 10 minutes 5 minutes till 12. We'll see